what role has the local church played in your business?
Okay, they told us you were going to forget this, so we're going to introduce what we do a little bit.
It's pretty cool that everybody knows me. I'm not going to be on script, okay? I'm not. Don't give me a script. I will not follow it.
I didn't want to just derail from your question before we introduce what we did, but this is so cool. Like, we have had our babies dedicated on this stage. This is so crazy to me. It's so cool to be here. But anyway, so we do social media, what you would term as, like, I kind of hate this term, but a modern day, like, influencer. And so we started that, like Dan said, in 2015, not as an influencer, it was a blog at the time. And I shared clothes. That's what I was interested in at the time. And then I had kids, and so that's what I was interested in after I had kids. And so we started sharing our family. And so it's evolved from there. And then in 2022, we started Nuuds, which is a clothing company that does elevated basics in neutral colors. That's where it gets the name Nuuds. And we were naming it. We didn't want people searching Daryl-Ann and Denner Nuuds, and so we wrote it N-U-D-E, or N-U-U-D-S, so it wouldn't be searched that way.
That was my idea. I did not want that happening.
We didn't want that to be a trending search option for my name. And so, so it's been a wild ride. So Nuuds is only 2 years old. So we like to say we have 4 kids, Rhett, Remy, Nuuds, and Ryan. And so we just had a baby. So that's our story a little bit. But now can you ask the other question?
I
have notes.
What would you say the local church, what part did the local church play in you guys starting a business and being successful entrepreneurs?
Okay, I'll start. I think that something that we've learned is we've watched a lot of what we've learned modeled in my parents, like you were just talking about. And so my parents have always been passionate about the local church. They've always been involved in a local church. And so growing up, I was always involved in a local church. And that was like a non-negotiable. That's what we did. We went to church. And so as we got married, that's what we did. And we started here the year that City Church started. And so Pastor Jude married us like a year after we started here. And so for us, I've been attending marketplace events with my parents. It's been modeled for us. And I think just the consistency of being in the church has been something that's been huge for us. You want to take it?
Yeah, I think also, like, being a part of a local church, you learn a lot of things, right? You learn, like, you don't judge the church based on the worship service that's happening. You go there, you own a part of that church, right? So the bathroom is dirty, you're there. You wipe up the seat, like you do what you have to do because you're building that church. Right. And I think that's like a huge key takeaway that we took into our businesses in the future is just owning it, right? You're helping build it, you're helping doing it, so yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said that's, we'll talk about like there's no like secret sauce for how we got to where we are, but I think something that has been really big in what we've learned is consistency. And so I think for us, being consistent, whether it be a local church, whether it be our business, showing up every day, showing up every Sunday, showing up every week, has been something that has been a non-negotiable for us. And so I think our church right now, to honor them where we are, we moved to Dallas, so we're at a church called Shoreline City, and their words this year are rooted and established. And I think something that we've learned is being rooted and established isn't something that happens in a week or a year even. Rooted and established happens in like years. So I think for us, like becoming rooted and established in a local church, in what we're doing, in a business even, like rooting and establishing a business isn't something that happens in 6 months. It's like, how do you show up every day, whether, like he said, whether it's good, whether it's not good, whether you're enjoying it, whether you're not enjoying it, whether you have a rift with somebody, like you show up and you like give. And so I think that consistency for us in the local church has just been one way, being consistent in the local church has been one way it's played a part, because over time, then we've built relationships, we've learned, we've been sewed into whether we, felt like going.
And when you build the local church and you build the house of God, he builds your house. So it's taken care of. It's already, taken care of, so.
And so before, I just want to tell you, before they started their own business, Daniel was a project manager for Rob Fletcher, who's Daryl-Ann's dad. And I remember Rob saying, like how sharp he was, how consistent he was, how good a job he did, how he could trust him. And then Daryl-Ann, he was like, like even when you guys first started this, he was like so concerned. He was like, Daryl-Ann does everything at the office. Like she was like his operations manager and she did everything. So before they started their own business, they were treating their father's business like it was their own business. And they were so good at what they did, it's a natural fit for them to do what they're doing now.
So, honestly, that's where we learned everything that we know now. That's where we saw things modeled, even in marketplace events and working for her dad. We learned like those principles of things, like just like being good, doing the right thing when no one's looking, like all those core things that pay off over time. It's not sexy. It's none of those things. It's just things that you do, right?
So true.
Success looks a lot like work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think
It does.
Yeah.
It looks a lot like consistency. It looks a lot like showing up when you don't want to show up.
Yeah. And I think sometimes I'll get asked like, well, how do I do it? And I think if you just start and you just show up and you give your all at whatever you're doing, like we treated it like it was ours, but I think I was selling shoes at Nordstrom and I was treating that like it was mine. And whatever it was, I've been taught, honestly, I've seen it modeled to give my all to it like it's my own. And I think that has, paid off. That consistency has paid off.
Yeah, consistency will pay off. So, second question that I didn't give you guys this one, so I'm just going to throw you guys one because
Okay.
I'm still kind of like your uncle, and I'm still training you a little bit. Okay.
Perfect.
So, what benefit did being part of the marketplace and going to the Harrison events, and because you've been doing this, for 20 years, and you, Daniel, since you before you guys got married. So, how did the being in the marketplace, how did that help you and help shape you and benefit you guys?
I think when we started in the marketplace, we were probably the youngest people in that marketplace. So what we did literally is just listened to the people, the generation that went before us, right? And we were dumb enough to believe what they were saying was true and test it and try it out. That's honestly where it played out for the most part. So when we were in those rooms, we were just I'd go to Mike and be like, what do I do here? And he's like, well, you just be consistent, or you just do this, and I just did it. And I think there's not really, Daryl-Ann and I both believe there's nothing inherently special about us. We're not more talented than anybody else. We're just willing to do what other people say and trust it and try it and just be consistent week over week, year over year. So.
Right. So true. And I think being involved and being in the room, I think there's something special about being in the room with people that think differently and think bigger. And so I'm so lucky that my parents put me in that room, and offered me the spot. And, I said this last night at dinner, but I was never made to think I wasn't supposed to be in that room. And so I think that getting to be in a room where people think bigger, getting around people who think bigger has completely changed the trajectory of my life. So showing up at a Bob Harrison Increase event, you get around people thinking different. It breaks you out of that mold of showing up maybe at work every day where people are thinking small, thinking the day to day, and you get in the room with people who are thinking in the millions instead of paycheck to paycheck. And then you're like, whoa, how do I think like that? And I think it really elevates your thinking, getting around people like that. And you realize, like Dan said, there's nothing really inherently special about these people. They're really just being consistent. They're thinking differently. And how do I do that? And I think really how you do that and how I've done it is just getting in the room with people who think like that and figuring out what they did and trusting it and trying it and doing it.
And a huge nod to this church and to Mike for allowing young people to feel there's a lot of places you can go as young people and feel less than, or it's not as important or any of that. But to sit in that room and feel like any other business person is incredible place. We could have went to those meetings, got pushed out because we weren't as important enough, or we weren't as successful, but they sat there and they saw it through, and here we are. So
I want you guys to catch a few things I said. They're just ordinary people. Yeah. They're just ordinary people that believe in extraordinary God. Yeah.
That's right.
They're just people that do everything they can in the natural, and they trust God for the super, and God has moved supernaturally in their lives.
That's right.
They're just, that's one of the things that Jan and I talk about all the time. She's a hairdresser. She was a shampoo girl. I was a drywall repair guy. Nothing special about us, but we got under good teaching in a good local church. We've been with Pastor Jude and Pastor Becky since the second service, and like they said, literally take what Pastor Jude's preaching on Sunday and see how you can put it into practice on Monday, and you watch God move supernaturally in your lives. What sacrifices did you make? What practices, habits did you implement that others wouldn't have understood?
Okay, so one of my very favorite books, I would encourage you all to read it. I think it's the coolest book ever. It's called The Go-Giver. And so it's so good. I've probably read it 10 times. I read it multiple times a year, but it talks about how the secret to success is giving. Which is what the Bible talks about. It just breaks it down into like a story that you can read through, and it's really good. But it says the secret to success is giving, and I think that's a huge mindset shift from like what everyone will tell you. Like the secret to success usually is, working your butt off and taking as much as you can take and all of that, and aren't you going to be like taken advantage of if you're always giving and things like that. And I think the truth is the secret to success is giving and seeing how much value you can add to someone else without the exchange mentality. Like how can
I think if you're giving with expectation, that's a transaction, right? If you're like giving someone with the expectation that later they're going to scratch my back, like that's not like this book and how we live our life is. That's not how it works. We give. And I think it makes a lot of things easier too, because if you give without expectation, you're not going to be disappointed in then. You just gave it. You gave it, and it's going to come back. It will come back 100% every single time. So, yeah. Yeah,
I think that one of the things I do, when we started our business in 2015 online, like influencing, every day, being consistent, again, I showed up and we would ask this question, and it's still the core of our business today. And it was like, how can I add value to somebody's life today? And so that is literally how I show up every single day. That is a question that I show up for every day. And I truly believe, we talked about this last night, but I truly believe money follows that. How do you add value to somebody's life? How can you increase them in some way? Whether that's just even like, making them feel good. Like, how do you add value to somebody's life? And the money follows that. And so I think we're a literal living testament of that, of me just showing up for $0 saying, how can I add value to somebody's life? And eventually somehow it turned into a way to make money. I
think it just taints it when you do the other way, right? So if you're like, okay, how do we make more money, right? You start thinking about those things. And then people know when you're selling them or you're desperate. You get desperate in certain parts because you're trying to sell them something, and then it becomes this transactional thing. If you're just giving from the beginning, it comes around. People want to reward you. If you give them out free advice or you make them feel good about themselves, you gave them some value, and they're going to want to come and like reward you for that in some other way. And even if you don't expect that they will, but it just happens. That's just like a law that happens.
I think in another mindset shift that we've had to, that has kind of like rocked our thinking too, that I just want to share because it's something that I'm learning too. And I think these are things you course correct in your mind all the time because you're literally taught. This one was a big one for me. Like, oh, how can I make it a win-win? And that sounds so good, right? Like every time you think that, you're like, wow, that person's really thoughtful. Like, oh, let's make it a win-win. Like in essence, what that means is it is a transaction. Like, how do you make it a win for them so it's a win for you? And the goal is like, how can you just give to somebody and just trust God that He's gonna take care of you? And I think like if you're doing a win-win, it's 50-50. How can you give 100 and then just trust God that He's gonna take care of you? And so I think that was one of the biggest like mindset shifts that I learned is don't look to make it a win-win. Look to just make it a win for them and see what happens and like trust God that He's gonna take care of you.
That is so good. We can all clap on that. I am so proud of you guys. I am so proud of you guys. I loved what you were talking about transactional, because my daughter and I, we talk about it all the time. I'm like, I am like in this mindset of how can I be less transactional in everything I do, and so because that, like literally, like people want to work for me, right? Because I'm less transactional, right? And so one of the things that I've been doing for about 20 years is praying for the people I work with, right? And I'm not doing it so that they'll, be better at their job. I'm doing it because that's what God's called me to do, right? And it's not transactional. Like there's no zero expectation on my part that they're gonna do that because I'm praying for them, they're gonna do better work. I'm praying for them mostly that they'll get born again, and the ones that know Jesus would know Jesus better. And because of that, me doing that and it not being transactional, like I think we just got our 20th person that's worked with us for 20 years.
Let's go.
And this is this does not happen in my industry, right? People stay for a year or two. They go to somewhere maybe that'll pay them a little bit more or something that seems better at that time. People don't leave working our company, right? And I think that's a byproduct of what we're doing. We're trying to be a blessing to them, and it's not transactional.
It's so
So
good.
good, you guys.
That's so good.
So good. What is the worst piece of advice you've ever received?
I love this one. Okay, I think the worst piece of advice is, and it's a huge thing right now, is you do you. I think that is the worst piece of advice. You hear it all the time, like, oh, you do you, like, whatever is good, like, you do you, like, make it work out for yourself, like, everything will work out. And I think you do you is the worst advice for the reason we talked about here. Like, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, no.
If you're doing you, it's literally putting blinders on to whatever else is going on with somebody else. And
it's implying what you're doing for you is the best, right?
Right.
And it implies you taking care of you first and not somebody else, and not giving and all those things.
yeah, and it's like, what if it was like, you do them, like you do someone else? And I think you always get taken care of if you do someone else. And so like do for others, like not for yourself. And so, and even when you're, you do you is like, a lot of times, you don't even know what's best for yourself. So a lot of times, like, even if it's like trying to figure out what to do, like we were saying earlier, I would go to, you and say like, hey, Mike, what should I do? Rather than just doing what I think is right in my head. Because a lot of times somebody's got wisdom that you need. Yeah. That's not you do what you're thinking in your head for yourself right now. And so I think.
And I think we all know that serving yourself at the end of the day, like it's not fulfilling, right? If you want to feel better, you go and serve someone else. Then you feel it has purpose, has other things behind it. I think we're all comfortable and know what that looks like, serving yourself. And it's not a good end, We've all been there. We all try.
Yeah.
So good, you guys. So good. So what is the best piece of advice that you have ever got?
So it's actually a quote, and it is, your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. So this is all kind of tying in. We're pretty much hitting this point really hard. But it's been true for our business. We've said it a different way. We've literally looked at how we can serve people better. When we're making our clothes, how can we serve that end customer better? It's not about the money part. It's about serving them in the end. So.
Yeah, and I think the better you serve somebody, the more people you're going to get the opportunity to serve, because they're going to want to tell somebody else about it. So then if you serve them better, you'll get more on the other side, and you continue to do that, and the influence you have just grows, which in all honesty, then your income grows because you're just serving people. And if that's your end game, it works out to more income in the end. Like it's not a get rich quick strategy, but I really truly believe it's the way you make the opportunity that the Lord can bless you to make the most amount of money. So I think that's our strategy, is if we just put on, how do we serve somebody well at the end of the day, all that's going to get taken care of, and more than we could more than we could actually like churn out on our own.
And it's really like living your life like this, right? Because like if you're going like this, right, and you're holding tight, you're not going to get anything else in your hand. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I want to think, we didn't get to hit on this, but I think like for us, I always like to leave with something like super practical when I go to something. And so I think for us, we were talking about this as we were talking about what we, wanted to say after you gave us questions and things. And like for us, tithing has been a non-negotiable our entire marriage. And I think that it has never been an option. So it's been like my parents have given financially, like, it has not been an option for us. And it has not been like, oh, if we think about it. And so for us, disciplining ourselves to do something like tithing or whatever, the more we take,
I think honestly, it's like one of our superpowers is just making things black and white, right? So we just decide at the beginning we are going to tithe, right? And that's just what we do, right?
Right.
It takes away the variable later, right? So you're going to sit there and you're going to go, okay, well, man, I got a little extra money. I really need to buy this thing. If you already decided before that you're going to tithe, then you don't have that conversation. You're less likely to fall in a situation. It's like it's self-discipline, but it's like you decided it way before. So you don't play that game. You don't go back and forth. You already decided what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like if you decide that, hey, this is how we are, we're not gonna like do bribes, we're not gonna do this, you just decide it beforehand. And so we try to make things really black and white so we don't get to choose later and we don't get to fall into making other choices.
Yeah, and I think like what you were talking about earlier, like atomic habits and essentialism and things like that, for me, like self-discipline is a huge like way of, making sure I'm going in the direction I want to go. And I think that for us, like self-discipline can be hard when you have lots of options on the table. And the more you can just decide, take options off the table, like not tithing is not an option for us. So it's easy. Like it's not a decision to make, it's made. So I think that same with the more practical sense of this, we've all heard it, is like if you're trying to diet, you don't put stuff in your pantry that isn't good for you. You take the decision making out of it. So there is no decision to be made. It's already done. So I think for us with tithing, it's been something I've done since I was a teenager because that's what my parents did. And the minute I got a job, that's what I did. And so for us, we can't afford to not do it. Like I would never take the chance and the risk of not doing it because it scares me to think what could happen because I know how good it does play out in your life when you do it. Like, so there's no way I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, and I think the decision to tithe gets harder when you have more money, right? Like, honestly, like, I think everyone thinks, like, okay, if you have a bunch of money, it's easy for you to tithe, right? But, like, it's a multiple of that number, right? Like, okay, it's $100 on $1,000 or whatever it is. Well, if it's $100,000, $1 million, I'm sure everyone in this audience can figure out something to buy with $100,000, right? But if you made that decision up front that this is who we are, this is what we do, then you just do it. Like, everyone can find something to buy. So, yeah, I think it really helps us by taking that off the table because we never even have to consider what can we buy. It goes to the church first. That's just what we do. That's who we are.
Yeah.
So good, you guys. I'm so proud of you guys. I mean, look at that, some of the stuff they're talking about. Like, they make things black and white. These are things that we'll do. These are things we won't do.
Right.
And they've already pre-decided what they will do and what they won't do.
Right.
Okay, so brand new married couple starts tithing right from the start. And so I remember that was with Jan and I, the same thing when we got married. She said that we had to tithe. It was probably, I think a Christian for 7 years before I found out some people didn't tithe, right? And I was like, I didn't know there was an option, right?
Yeah.
Janet didn't give me an option. She said, this is what Christians do. And by the time I found out that some people didn't tithe, like we had already experienced the supernatural of God.
Right.
Yep.
So why would I have turned back then?
Right.
It's like we already had experienced the goodness of God and the faithfulness of God.
Right.
And so they started tithing when they were not making very much money.
Right.
And they just consistently kept going as God continued to bless them. And so I'm going to ask you a question that's not on the list. I mean, like, they were so prepared. I mean, I had a conversation with Daniel, and he was like, he wanted to know every question. And I'm like, bro, it's going to be good, man. You'll be fine. He's like, Mike, you've done this 100 times. It's our first time. I'm like, you got this. Okay, so you guys are doing spectacular. Not good, spectacular. So and this one may be a challenge, but we'll kind of sift through it a little bit. Having that mentality, because Jen and I have that same mentality about serving people and making it a win for other people. Sometimes I'm assuming sometimes you guys have been burned, and so my assumption is yes, because it's happened to Jen and I. How do you keep your heart right? Because the majority of the people do not look at things the way you look at. How do you guys keep your heart right?
Okay, I have two things. So I think that, one, if you go into things non-transactional, you made the decision from the beginning that that's what you were going to do regardless of the outcome. So I think that's one way. That's a protection. It's like a black and white thing too, right? Like, oh, I decided I'm doing this regardless of what they did. That's what my decision was. I think the second part of that for us, we're like very, very big on this, is personal responsibility. So we own whatever decision we made. And so I think that at the end of the day, like, I'm responsible for whatever decision I made. And, I'm not responsible for what anyone else does. And I'm not a victim to what somebody does to me. So I think that we decided that we are not victim to how we're treated, and nobody can waste my time. What I choose to do with my time is what I choose to do with it. And I think that how they respond is on them, and I'm going to keep living this way, right? So I think just knowing that you're not a victim, your decisions, you're fully responsible for. The life you want, you're fully responsible for, which is extremely empowering. To think, hey, if I want to be here, I can do it, and I just have to make decisions to get myself there. And so not really focusing on how somebody treated me, because at the end of the day, if I get burned, I'm human, so it's a blow to, but I've also watched my dad get burned 1,000,000 times, so I've watched people burn good people. So I know it happens to even people I believe to be really good. So I'm like, I can be really good still, and this is still going to happen to me. It's a non-negotiable, but going into it from the beginning, being like, this is what I'm choosing for me, regardless of how they respond. It's not a transaction here. And so...
Yeah, I think ultimately at the end of the day, you control you, right? We can't control what the other person does with the information, but we're going to put it out there. We're going to do it. And I think one of our things at Nuuds with all of our employees, one of our things is leave people better than we found them. That's how we think about the clothing industry. That's how kind of one of our mottos is leave it better than we found it. And I mean, in that scenario, you have people that burn us all the time. But at the same point, we wouldn't have what we had if we didn't trust to begin with or go. And honestly, doing the right thing and doing right by people, you sleep better at night. I don't have to think, watch my back, look behind me. You do the right thing anyways. You do it, and you just sleep well. Honestly, that's practical.
And I choose to believe that God has something better for me if that is the case. So for example, leave people better than we found. Leave our motto, we stole it from somebody. I don't remember who it was, is leave it better than you found it. And so with our people, that's how we treat them. We always say, we want to, and with our leaders in Nuuds, at our leaders meetings, we always say, we are responsible to leave people better than we found them. And so we work with a ton of Gen Z, and it's very fun and a lot of work. And so I love it. But it's what makes our company really cool, honestly, because they're really cool and cooler than we are.
Much cooler than us.
Yeah,
for sure.
And so I think that what's cool, though, is you'll see they don't know, too, to your point, they don't know all of this. They're 22, a lot of them. Literally, I think we have 10 people under the age of 23. So I think that that's a big deal. They don't know they're going to burn you without even really realizing it, because just out of, sheer innocence, and they're not, some of them aren't even trying. But I think that knowing at the end of the day, we'll tell our leaders, okay, yes, what she did maybe wasn't right, but she left better than she came. And so I think that that's what we own. That's the personal responsibility part that I think is so big to us, is we're only responsible for what we can control, and we want to leave things better than we found them. And so That's our motto.
You guys, I do not know where you got all this wisdom, okay? You guys are like wisdom champions here. I mean, I'm just listening. Do you guys listen to that? Yeah. Okay? Are you hearing this wisdom? These guys are in their 30s. Think of what we could do with the next generation. Think of what value we could add to the next generation if we have people in their 30s now adding value and serving what is it, Gen Z? Yeah. Okay, and so that's what's the age group of that, anyways?
I don't know. They're all like the ones we work with. They're all like 20 to 23.
Our average age of our whole entire company, including like senior positions, is 24. Because.
And you guys are like the real old people. You're millennials.
We're the oldest in the office.
Yeah, you guys are falling in the millennials, right? With
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so, gosh,
earlier said we have 4 kids. We have actually like 24, 34 kids. Yeah.
Let me just ask you, what is the best way, because I'm trying to figure out it was hard enough for me to figure out how to deal with millennials, right? And now trying to deal with Gen Z, what is the best way, how do they receive information? How do they understand, and what is motivating that generation?
That's a great question. I think that they really like, and to be honest, this is something Daniel's really good at. So they really like to be able to run with an idea. So if we give them an idea, they are really typically very strongly creative. And so they have good ideas. But they don't like when you tell them exactly what to do. They would like for you to tell them like, hey, we have to do this, and let them help you come up with the idea. If you empower them, they think that's like gold to them. That is like where they receive fulfillment in their job. I think we've noticed that if we try to micromanage them, they don't respond well at all.
And I think that makes sense for like anyone that's younger, right? They're used to being told what to do all the time. If you go and go like, hey, this is the objective, this is what we need to do, just get us to the finish line. They're gonna own it, and they have something to prove, and so they're gonna do it. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
And I think for us, like giving them feedback in a way like that's been a dance I've had to learn, because I tend to be very honest and direct. And so I think that giving them feedback in a way, because giving a creative feedback is almost insulting the process, right? So like it's a dance, right? So I think that learning how to do that has been like really a growth opportunity for me. And like, okay, how do I deliver this in a way that they will leave this feeling empowered, like not beaten down? So like I can either do one or the other, empower them or beat them down. If I just tell them it's bad, which is like, you could talk to me like that. You could say like, hey, this isn't good, we got to fix it. If I said that to them, they would not end well. Like they would be very defeated, and they would not show up to do a good job for me. So like, how do we get them to show up to do a good job, not only for me, but because they want to? Like that's like the next step. And then that is where if like with us, if we can find that is like their superpower, because they are so creative and they're so good. That's why we literally mean it when I say we intentionally hire them, because they are so creative and so good. I really truly believe like we see value in them, and they feel that. Like we see their value and we see their worth. And
when you do that dance right at the beginning, they end up taking over departments, and you're not doing that part of it, because they own it and they're trusted. So, and they feel trusted, so then they go above and beyond. So
yeah.
Oh my goodness, so good. And I mean, like you hit some really good spots. I mean, like not just Gen Z, but I think every generation wants to be empowered, right? And I recently had read this book for like the third time. It's called It's Your Ship, the best damn ship in the Navy. Sorry, Pastor Jude, I said damn in church. And it talks about that pay is like 5th on the reason scale of what motivates people, right? And which, it was weird for me, because like pay really kind of motivated me the most, right? So I was looking at this going, wow, And being empowered was number one. So did you hear what they said? They empower people. Think of, just take a moment and think, how can we empower more people? How can we empower more people? When you're doing that, you're literally unlocking the creativity in their life. You're literally giving them a permission slip to be great.
So good.
So good, you guys. So marriage and family, it is your brand. How do you guys safeguard that?
So I think knowing the back end of this, so my family is really like push everything under the rug and it all blows up like years down the road. Daryl-Ann's family is like, let's handle and deal with this now, and it looks really ugly.
It looks really ugly.
Really ugly. Like when I first started coming around, I'm like, whoa, I don't know about you guys. This is like, why did you say that? Like you didn't have to egg them on, like whatever, you know? So I think it was a big transition for me for sure. But I think really that is a really healthy way of dealing with things, because you don't deal with surprises down the road.
Yeah.
And I think it looks really ugly because they care about each other and they don't want to wait to solve it. It's like, I care about you enough to handle it right now.
Yeah.
And so to safeguard our family, that's what we do. We handle things right as they come. We worked with her dad at the construction company. We all handled it right there, right? We handled it, and we were able to proceed with business. And we didn't have stuff hiding in the back, and it's why we're able to do it now at Nuuds. We have her brother, my sister, all working there. But.
Yeah, and I think, people think that loving someone is treating them good. Like, I love his family, but it looks loving. Like they didn't really have a big argument. It looks loving. No, loving someone is, saying what is hard at the moment to make sure you're safeguarding and protecting that relationship. That's love. So I think that for our family, we love each other way too much to let something go and turn into bitterness. Like if it's gotten to bitterness, it's too far. So I think that for us, handling things, while it may look ugly for a minute, it's not disguised ugliness for a long time. And then eventually no relationship. So for us, handling things quickly and in the moment and honestly has been one of the biggest things. And I think the other thing, I don't know about everyone in this room, but for us, we work with family. That's an interesting dynamic, is working with your family members. And I think this is a very practical, non-spiritual thing, but I think for us, establishing roles of you're responsible for this, you're responsible for this. I mean, it's practical, non-family, but really when you're working with family and things can overlap, knowing who's responsible for what and not overstepping and letting people do their thing has been key for us.
Yeah, we did that at the construction company, and so she did the finance, I did the project management, Rob did the field, and we just allowed each other and trusted each other in those areas. So if there's something about finance, we didn't try to micromanage what she did. We were like, hey, what's the decision on this?
Yeah.
And we respected the decision that was passed down.
Yeah.
We could question it, we could do all those things, but ultimately let people be empowered in the area that they're at. And
yeah.
I love what they said. Clarity is your friend. Yeah. In fact, I've gone through it feels like years of counseling, but it's been years of coaching, right? And I have on my desk my 3 superpowers, and it's simplicity, priority, and clarity. And those are your superpowers. And so, Pastor Isaac, do you have some questions ready for?
We got over 20 questions, but for the sake of time, we'll do a couple. So the first one, what was a challenge you faced early on in your business, and how did you overcome it?
Okay. So I say okay, so we started, I'm going to use influencing, as the business, but we started that in 2015, and it didn't make any money at all for 3 full years, right? So when we talk about consistency, I just showed up every day on purpose for 3 years with no income because, my heart was in it. And so I think that in 2019, so at this point we've been making money for a year, at it, not good money, like not replaceable of an income money, just like, we.
Like it didn't feel worth it at all.
Yeah.
Like we were making money, but it wasn't worth it.
Right. So in 2019, I had just had my son in January of 2019. We had been married at that point, so bringing the marriage part into it, we'd been married 2012, almost 7 years, right? So a long time. We then have a kid, which changes the dynamic completely. If you've done that, so you know that. But I think that it changed the dynamic for us completely. We weren't making that much money. We were struggling. Our marriage was struggling because of having a kid, and not because of having a kid, but because we didn't know how to navigate that yet. Our relationship with a kid, and I think that. For us, we had this awesome marriage for 7 years, and then we brought a kid into it, which was incredible and awesome, but we were drowning. And I think that for us, like watching that back, thinking about that back, we got he was maybe 4 months old, and we were passing ships, the two of us. We had a really colicky, hard baby, and so that was a very hard strain on us. And so getting there, we just were not good here. And I think that made it transition into not good in our business. And I think we were toying with the idea, do I just stop this? We were fighting over it constantly, this whole influencing thing. And I was like, do I just give it up? It's not even making money. I've done this for a long time. We're fighting because I can't do it, because you need to work, because we need the money, because we didn't have enough money the other way. And so we were arguing back and forth, and that was a breaking point in our business of to be honest, I did give up. At that point in time in 2019, I gave up. And so I think that it was Labor Day weekend of 2019. It's very symbolic for me. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I had at this point an 8-month-old. We were recovering slightly, right? We had gone to counseling, we had gone to therapy at that point. We were recovering, and I remember it was Labor Day weekend. I cut my hair off, and I was like, I can't. Here's the point. I gave up. I was like, I can't do this anymore the way I'm doing it, which was a perfectionism model of everything was perfect before I put it out there. Everything was cookie cutter and seamed up, done perfectly well. I was like, I either have to show up authentically as me, or I'm done, and I don't show up at all. So either this ship is going to go down because I'm no longer perfect and it looks like a total crap show out into the world, or I just give up. So I'm like, before I just give up, I'll just go down with the ship if it sinks. So I'll just give up this perfectionism model and show up authentically as myself. And I did that. And in some ways, I finally feel like I gave up and gave it to the Lord at that point. And I was like, this is it. I'm at the end of my strength, and I gave up. And our business, I kid you not, doubled year over year from that point on. And it was
so good. That is so good, you guys. So good. Isaac, before the next question, I want to comment on what she said. Done is better than perfect, because perfect is never done. So when she took a step back and said, I'm going to be authentically myself, and I'm going to do the best I can, but I'm going to leave it, we all have, she left it with flaws in it. What happened? Her business exploded. So good. Pastor Isaac.
All right, the next one is, I think it'll add on to this first one. It's really cool. In a world of show your best, hide the rest, how do you find motivation to keep showing up on the bad days?
such a great question. Wow, someone just whipped that out.
Well, I think we ultimately decided it before. Just like we were saying earlier, we decided we were going to do that when we weren't making any money. So I think that mostly is.
And I think you get better at it. It's a trained muscle. Like showing up is a trained muscle. I think you do it even when you have to show up, like show your best, hide the rest. I think even showing up and being uncomfortable, that's okay. I still show up uncomfortable at times. There are still times where I'm like, for some reason I'm off and I still do it. And I think that's still blessed. You did show up, so showing up uncomfortable, showing up not good enough, showing up is better than not showing up. And I feel like God can work with showing up. You show up, God can work with that. And I think that we're just picture of that.
Such a good answer. Are you sure you guys are professionals at this?
Definitely not.
No.
Pastor Isaac?
Yeah, we'll do one more. I thought this one was interesting. It just said strategy versus execution. I think what the person meant was, how do you guys balance strategy and planning for all the things that are going to happen and executing on that? So what's the balance
I
there?
love this question. Daniel's the strategy and I'm the executor. So I would prefer no strategy and I would just go for it. If we get an idea, I will run in like guns blazing, like, oh my God, I had this amazing idea. Let's do it. Let's do it tomorrow, right? And I think that we found this really sweet balance between strategy and execution, because I, either will make a mess of things or it costs 10 times more than it should because I didn't have a strategy going into it.
I think it's definitely stretched me because she's like, okay, we're going to do this. And I'm like, well, that's not really like possible or feasible, right? And that's really just not going to work out. And over time, I learned to, okay, trust what she has. The ideas that she has are great. And I know that she's going to keep on bugging me until we get it and do it anyways. So I might as well just jump on board and just start planning it like it is. And it's a really cool thing because our team does the same thing. So it's like, okay, we're going to launch a store. Okay, they're like, all right. I'm like, yeah, we're going to do it in a month, in the Grove, in LA. We don't have anything designed. And a lot of the teams looking at you the same way I look at her, and I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. But it's really cool. It's really cool on the other side of it because now they're like, okay, yeah, we're going to do this. Of course we're going to do this.
So Daniel tells the team all the time, we do impossible things in 24 hours or less, which is true. We show up every day and we do impossible things within 24 hours or less. And I think that when we had Nuuds, we wanted to do our first pop-up, and our team was so small at the time. It still is small, but we showed up and I was like, you guys, we're gonna do this pop-up. I have this idea. And I threw it out there. This is March, right? I'm like, by June, first weekend of June, we're doing it. It's March, okay? And they're like, all right. And so I'm like, we're gonna do this pop-up. I have no idea what it's gonna cost. I have no idea how to do it.
She never thinks about any of that stuff.
No. So I'm like, we're doing it, guys. And so they're like, all right. I kid you not. One of the girls on our team, who's no longer on our team, which is such a bummer, I love her so much. Her name is Jaden. She got on the phone. She's 23 years old. Gets on the phone with the Grove, okay, the Grove in LA. And she's like, yeah, this is our idea. Pitches them the whole idea as if we're some humongous company. Pitches them the whole idea.
We have 6 people at the time.
They sign on to it. I'm like, Jaden, don't tell them it's our first one. Don't tell them it's our first one.
They literally said, oh, it looks like you guys have done this multiple times. You're so organized. You're so more organized than all these other companies. And I'm like, I'm sitting back going, if I knew you were having a call with the Grove, I would have been on that call.
No, she handled it herself. That's how much. And so I'm just like, okay. And so I'm like, just don't let them know it's our first one. Don't let them know till it's over. And then to this day, they've invited us back 3 times. But I think that the cool part is the strategy and execution. I will come up with an idea, and Daniel has been the one to execute the strategy part behind it. And I think there's been a balance of knowing that that's a 50-50 balance has been important to us. Yeah.
So good. So good.
We'll do this last one.
We'll take 2 more, Isaac.
2 more. What would you say to someone who's just starting in business?
I would say, people ask me this all the time, more specifically for what I do, how do you do it? I think if you have the desire to do it, do it. Make it simple, do it, try it. I mean, I've tried so many different things, and I think that do it and try it. You guys, I only say this because I recognize you right there. I was a teacher for a year. I've tried so many things. I have literally tried so many things. One of the girls I taught is sitting right there, but hi. Yeah, I was a high school chemistry teacher for a year. I was like, I want to try being a teacher. So I did it. I think if you have a desire to do it, there's a reason you have a desire to do it, do it. I think that just do it and show up every single day, whether you feel insecure, whether you feel uncertain, whether you feel no matter what you feel, I think the biggest thing for starting a business is consistency. If you're consistent, it will work out. And not consistent for 3 months, like consistent for 3 years without getting paid. Like, if you really have this desire within your heart, show up no matter what it looks like every single day. And I think that it'll work out. It will work out. Like, it's worked out for us every time.
So good. Gosh, that was good.
What are some things you consider before deciding to continue or to stop in business?
So we kind of have a motto, and it's like, God can't move a parked car, right? So like before we make any decision, we go, God, we want your will. We literally pray about it before buying a house, before doing anything. We're like, God, we want your will, and we just start moving in that direction. And we ask him to slam the doors in our face and open the doors. So that's kind of how we live our life. We just move in the direction. We're like, okay, we're gonna put an offer on this house. And if you want us to have it, we're gonna have it. But like, I think there's a time, there's a place, definitely waiting on the Lord, all that. But like, we take action, we move towards something. So we honestly just rely on God for it. Do we move this direction? Do we introduce this new product line? We're gonna move this direction. Please slam the door in my face because I don't want to be outside of your will. I want to be in your will and where that's at. So I think that's how we make a lot of our decisions.
Yeah. We just had a door slammed in our face, literally. Well, I had it slammed in my face, unfortunately, by the strategy. But like, honestly, we just...
We're going through counseling on it right now. It's too soon.
But like 2 weeks ago, like deciding whatever, I
raw.
really wanted to do this, and I still want to do it. So we're still like looking for a way. But it, trying to
I'm not looking. I'm not looking.
Using, wisdom has been something that we've relied on. And I think like I, relied on his wisdom, unfortunately for that one of like, is it wise to do it? And so I think just doing that too.
I think interesting context on this, when we first moved to Texas, that's when we started Nuuds. And when we were looking at starting, we started with 2 businesses. We're like, okay, we want this cosmetics company, or we want like the clothing company,
gosh,
right?
yeah.
So we put 2 of them out there. We really wanted the cosmetics company. We got like a marketing company sign that was so hard to get. We had factories set up. This was like our $1 million idea. It was perfect.
I still love the idea.
We're still gonna do the idea, God willing. But so we got signed with these. We kind of just threw Nuuds as kind of like a side project, like really hoping that this one won out.
When I tell you that Nuuds was my side project, like we prayed about both of them and we're like, this is our $1 million, like sell it to the big dogs idea one day. This is incredible. God's given us this idea. And we prayed over them. We kind of pursued both of them. And when I tell you that like God opened door after door for Nuuds, even when we didn't, it was so obvious.
But more importantly, slam the doors. Like,
right.
So
That's
on
so
the
good.
cosmetic company, we signed with a manufacturer. We signed with a marketing company. We get an email from the marketing company going, we can't accept you anymore, just out of the blue.
After they already said yes.
24 hours later, we get slammed in our face. Oh, we can't produce your product. And at the same time, doors started opening at Nuuds.
Yep.
And we're like, we really want this, but you're opening doors there. So it's also not knocking down this door when God's opening other doors. Like he's testing
that's so
you.
good.
If what you're saying is like, what you're saying, you believe,
Yeah, and I think that for me, just knowing that a slammed door, that was so discouraging for me. I'm just going to be totally honest. Like, this was my big idea. It looked like I was making like this huge traction. Like, we had the most incredible marketing company, the most incredible factory, and they both had said yes, and then both slammed doors in our face within 24 hours of each other. And I was like, what the heck, God? Like, this was it. Like, we even made traction. Like, why is this happening to me? Like, I was like, pity party for a second. Why is this happening to us? And the truth is, it was the biggest protection, those slammed doors, for this huge opportunity that we didn't even know was going to happen to us, like that we were pursuing as a side thing at the time. And like, now, of course, I would want nothing more than what we had. Like, it's so cool. But I didn't see it as that at that point in time, Like, I didn't see today then. And so, even though it was discouraging.
So good. Pastor Isaac, I got to take one more question. They're just crushing it.
What would you say to an aspiring entrepreneur? How can I prepare myself?
I think if you're looking at starting something, like making sure that you love it. You love it and you want to breathe it, not for any other reasons, not because it's going to make you a ton of money, because you're not going to last. If it's just about the money part, you have to have the heart behind doing it. We never would have made it 3 years as a side hustle, making no money, spending all the hours and time in it if she didn't love writing her blog to begin with. That we never would have endured it. It would have got hard and we would have quit after a month, 2 months. So I think finding something that you love and then just doing it and being consistent. And no matter what that looks like, it's going to be embarrassing at some points. People are going to be like, hey, why are you doing that? It's not making any money. You're going to always have the critics.
I had 400 followers on Instagram when I started because they were my friends. And I went down to 200. So I'm just being honest. Like, it didn't look good from the beginning, okay? But I think that, it was like not a good first impression of how it was going to go. But I think that showing up consistently, like, I feel like I'm not going to knock this question, but I feel like part of like, how can I be prepared is really an insecurity that is just a delay tactic, if I'm just going to be honest. So like, I'm not trying to, I just think that.
Tell them.
I told you I was direct. I told you. So I think that, how can I be prepared? The reality is, I still don't know what I'm doing. So like, we show up unprepared, I think, every day, right? And I think that God can use you unprepared. If that's your desire, you just show up. And so I think that worrying about how to prepare yourself, reading another book, you're just wasting time. Like, you're not going to be more prepared. If you want to be a doctor, I hope you prepare. But at the same time, if you're starting a business, just start. Just don't overcomplicate it. Don't let your insecurity stop you, because a lot of times, how could I be more prepared is really just you feel insecure. And I get that. I think you just start anyways.
Wasn't that good, you guys? Wasn't that good? Will you guys give it up for Daryl-Ann and Daniel Denner?